financial year of 2020-2021. But the manufacturers appear not to be ready to foot this bill. Today, we want to understand the circumstances surrounding the digital tax stamp. And of course, to help us analyze this and its impact on the manufacturing sector is the Manager, Advocacy and Policy at the Uganda Manufacturers Association, Mr. Muhammad Mzamiru. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well, to start with, can you give us a history of this digital tax stamp?
Well, the digital tax stamp is one of those measures that government has always been thinking about in terms of increasing their domestic revenue mobilization. Now, the discussions around digital tax stamps began way in around 2017, and there's been back and forth consultations with different stakeholders.
All right.
And throughout this period, we wanted to find out who and how who is implementing, how is it going to, the process going to be implemented, and is it affecting manufacturing, how is it going to improve manufacturing, how is government benefiting, how manufacturers benefiting. And these are discussions that have taken quite a long period, as you may have noticed. And around 2018, government went on to implement, or they through SICPA. It's a Swiss company that is doing the implementation, or that is running with the installation, not implementation. This company has been in liaison with URA and government largely, and a few manufacturers. I won't say all manufacturers. A few manufacturers of excisable commodities. And the excisable commodities in context are the cigarettes, soft drinks like juices and water, and as well as alcohol, right. Spirits, beers and wines. So these are the four areas where government concentrated. And initially it was supposed to be a pilot system that would then be rolled out to all the other sectors that produce excisable commodities. So this is a discussion that has been going on. Then around November 2019, we had a discussion, it's around October 2019. After so many instances of the initial installations having issues, and then people accessing stamps, and who is, the issue of cost, who bears the cost, has been ongoing all that long. Then we had a discussion with the Prime Minister's office, with the Prime Minister himself, and a couple of government officials. And in that discussion, government committed to meeting the cost of the stamps for 1 year. And on that commitment, manufacturers accepted to allow SICPA and URA to do site visits and install the machinery in those factories which had not been having installations. So in that meeting again, government agreed to have a moratorium of 90 days, a period of 90 days from 1st November up to 1st Feb, to allow for transition, because these are sophisticated machines which needed time to be adjusted to fit with the system. So go live date was 1st February.
Okay.
Yes. And 1st February 2020, that's when we saw everybody. Okay, everybody in the context of URA, but not everybody in the context of manufacturing. But those who are easily accessible, who had systems, who had, for instance, internet and all infrastructure in place. So those ones had their go live on 1st of Feb this year. Okay. Yes.
Interesting. You want to add more to that?
Yes, you spoke correctly about the communication that has been authored by the Minister of Finance on 13th of this month, indicating that effective 1st July, all manufacturers who are supposed to be paying excise duty, who are supposed to be, who enrolled for the DTS system, have to foot the bill of the digital stamps.
Yes, please.
So this has been quite a shock to us, because according to the discussions that we've been having, we thought that this period is commensurate to the time at which we went live.
If I may ask,
yes.
You did initially say that government committed to paying for 1 year. Which kind of year are we looking at? I would imagine it's a financial year, right?
Given the time of commitment, it wasn't it was more or less towards the beginning of the next financial year. So November, if you may count, even if it was a financial year, then we would assume that by November the next year, in that quarter of November, then that is when we would expect the manufacturers to be able to foot the bill.
Why do you think government is changing its mind at such a moment?
Well, I can't really look into government's mind. We're just surprised as well. Because I would tell you frankly that the timing is quite very hectic at the moment. The timing has not been good, considering the fact that these very factories are the most hit by the COVID. You know that they depend on functions, for instance, which were stopped already. We know their best market is basically the population, and the population is not consuming as they should be consuming. So if you go ahead and put an additional cost onto the already struggling industry, then you're likely putting it to death or anything.
Well, that's quite interesting. But again, I'm still more interested in this issue of government commitment, because our reporter Saddam interacted with Vincent Seruma, the URA spokesperson, and it indicated, there was an indication that government had committed to pay until a certain period within a financial year which ended just recently. Okay? And I would imagine that's why they're writing this letter, seeking that you start, well, the manufacturers start meeting the costs. Who should we believe? You or URA?
Okay. Now, it rightly said, you have to find who to believe. The manufacturers have been committed to in writing, okay? And as manufacturers, we base on what you have written to us to act, okay? UMA, particularly as the umbrella body of the manufacturing fraternity, was written to by the Minister of Finance, indicating that government, actually it came from a letter from the President, indicating that government will install at their cost, okay? And so on that commitment, the Minister of Finance wrote to UMA indicating that government is going to pay for the cost for 1 year. So counting a year, they didn't specify a financial year. They didn't say a financial year. Government usually speaks of a financial year, and we know exactly when the financial year begins. But they said a year. Okay. So year means from the time when you have written or committed yourself to the next best date towards the very time that you committed yourself. So that is a year.
Months later.
Basically.
Wow.
So they didn't say for a financial year, because it was in the middle of the financial year, and they didn't. So 1 year means 1 year, okay, according to us. Okay. Yes.
That's interesting. Now, I'm interested in understanding how the consumer finds benefit in the digital stamp, but in this particular stamp. But before we go to that, about how much really are we looking at? Because you keep measuring the cost, or who is footing the cost. How much is it?
Okay, now, I would say, let me first put this straight. We as UMA and as manufacturers are not against government's ability to mobilize domestic resources. It's very important for the economy, and any person out there should be really interested in paying their tax or meeting their tax obligations. So I need to say that clear. But when the tax obligation is increasing the cost, then that is a different issue. In the particular instances, the particular instance that we are discussing now, government is intending to increase the cost on mobilization, which cost is higher than actually what they are going to collect. Now, if you're looking at figures, I would say I don't have the figures right now, but I would share with you the figures at an opportune moment. But we're seeing, for instance, when you look at the Gazette that came out on 14th of October last year, there are different rates for different stamps, and we computed the different rates for the production that was at the time in 2019 October. And these figures were appalling, So, for instance, if government was going to pay, to collect $5 million, they were going to pay $111 million in collection. So you use 111 to collect 5. You understand? So it's a very absurd kind of situation.
It is indeed.
So the economy is losing in any case, because the company that is doing the whole system is not even a Ugandan company. That aside, the amount of money that is going to the company and out of the country is exorbitant, So that is a big concern to us, but wouldn't mind as long as government is footing the bill to collect what is due to them. That is the gist of the matter.
You did bring in the issue of the cost of collecting the amount of money that they want to get vis-a-vis the amount of money that they want to collect. Well, by they I mean government. Then at some point I would wonder, one, government says that it is doing this to, yes, collect some revenue for the coffers, but two, to protect the customers or the consumers of some of these products from the counterfeit products that have gone through your unit, the manufacturers, onto the market. And that is ideally to curb illicit manufacturers on the market. I would understand, one would understand and argue that manufacturers are rejecting this or claiming footing bills and who foots it simply because they are hiding something. What is your take on that?
No, actually, you brought out a very pertinent issue in there. This whole system would go a long way in improving so many things, not only the quality and government being able to trace, but even most importantly for the manufacturers is getting everybody on board. Okay? But the question now comes, who is going to enforce? Have you ever seen a stamp by yourself?
Unfortunately not.
But they have been in production since Feb.
I am informed, yes, they are.
So who is enforcing? Because like I said, there are so many manufacturers, people who are doing this business under their garages, but the consumers are not even aware. The consumer has not been sensitized that this is how the stamp looks like. Okay, and if you don't find a stamp on this product, don't buy it. Have you had anything like that? Unfortunately
not.
So is that really in the good spirit of protecting the consumer?
Yet again, I would ask you, how does government convince you to benefit from this? What is the foreseen benefit as manufacturers?
Okay, we see a lot of benefit, and that is why we are not against the system. It would go a long way in resolving most of our issues.
What are those issues?
One of the issues is the fact that government assuming that the manufacturers are not meeting their obligations to the maximum. They are collecting less than they assume they should be collecting, which is okay, naturally. And the other bit is the fact that there is no enforcement, okay? Enforcement of, ensuring that everybody, wherever they are, they're on board, okay? By now, before the shift of the cost to the manufacturers, by now government should have come up with a measure and then say, some statistics that, we've discovered this so many producers out there, we're able now to trace them and we have put them on the system, because as much as we know, the system is still a little bit in shambles. It's still shaky. You find that system breakdowns are common, our run downtown is a little bit longer, there's a lot of interruptions which the system itself has not been clarified to make sure that there is seamless production. Okay. Now, we just wonder how then it's going to be extended to everybody else. Would really love to see that everybody is on board. The consumers are on board, you know, all producers on board, and everybody, including the media, is on board. Okay. So we're not against government collecting what is due. That is perfectly normal, and we're okay with it, and we have been compliant. You'll not find a single manufacturer who government will pinpoint and say you were under declaring or you did not meet your obligation in terms of excise duty. All people on the list have been compliant. You'll not find one whom they saw that you flouted on such a date. But there are so many out there who have not been compliant. They are off the radar, but they are not considered. So whose benefit is it? It is the manufacturers, the manufacturers who are compliant, who would benefit if the system had extended to everybody. That is perfect, okay. So we need the system to extend to everybody. Whoever is producing that product in the garage should be able to enroll on the system. But do you foresee it being implemented?
That's a very interesting thought again, and I love leaving the questions back to you at some point. But again, I thank God that you're bringing up some of these issues. So let us now come to the side of the manufacturers, as you've said. Yes, you foresee these benefits coming in. Now, the issue of the costs that you're talking about, the normal method would be that when government imposes a cost that increases the expense meant in production of a certain product, you push the cost back to the consumer.
Yeah.
The consumers in the Ugandan market are surely used to these fluctuating prices of products that don't even need explanation sometimes. 1 minute you're buying a bottle of water at 800 shillings, the other day you see it labeled with 1,000 shillings. Why is it really your concern that there is a cost to be met if you know at the end of the day you're going to push it to the consumers?
Now, unfortunately, with excise duty, it's a little bit hard because most of these products have what we call, okay, let me put it in perspective. When a price of a water bottle or that water aqua CP increases, somebody will look for an alternative because we do not have brand royalty in Uganda in most cases for most of these products because the producers are quite many. Okay, and the tests quite more or less the same, right? So in that instance, people will not have, you may be committed to taking a Coke product, but when you go to a supermarket and you see an alternative that is a little bit cheaper, you'll be tempted to try it. So there is a lot of, we call it in economics, demand, there is elasticity of demand is quite high on those products that somebody easily shifts to another product very easily. I didn't want to use the economics terms.
No.
Yes, so it is very easy for somebody to look for an alternative. And what do you think the alternative will be in this instance?
Well, if I was the consumer, I would go for an alternative that protects me against a counterfeit product.
Okay. Maybe you are a special consumer, but any other consumer, let's say in the alcohol sector, somebody will go for the cheapest, which in most cases is from a person who is not on the system.
So, Mr. Muhammad, would we then assume that the manufacturers are more concerned about retaining their market share than the health and protection of the consumers?
Not necessarily. When you look at the product, the quality of the products that these manufacturers are producing is unquestionable. Everyone on the list is at least certified by UNBS. Okay, you'd rarely find one who has a product that is substandard. Okay, but that aside, there are so many.
Is that a fact?
That is a fact. I'll tell you for a fact that every member of UMA is certified. For a fact. Yes. So, but there are so many illicit producers out there, and they produce and package products which more or less look like the product that our compliant manufacturers are doing. Okay, And a consumer who has not been sensitized, and that brings me back to the issue of sensitization. A consumer who has no idea of what is going on, okay, who does not even know that there is a digital stamp that has been issued, who does not know how to use a digital stamp to tell whether a product is actually counterfeit or is a genuine product, because they don't even know how the stamp looks like. There is no mechanism of checking, you know. And who even has the time to check whether the product? We've had Q marks for quite a long time, but who goes to a shop and asks, "Give me a product that has a Q mark"?
That's a very interesting thought. I'm actually curious if you could answer it in the next comment.
Yes. So basically, what we are saying is that when you shift a cost, okay, the consumer will not know that you have shifted a cost to them because you're producing a quality product. Very few will look at it that way. So in most cases, they'll always shift to another product, which in most cases is not certified, but cheaper, because it more or less does for them what they deserve or what they desire. I'm thirsty, I'll go for water in a Cavera as opposed to buying a water in a bottle. Much as what's the difference anyway? Okay. The other one is just bottled, this one is cheap, and 100 shillings, 200 shillings. So you see that kind of scenario.
Right.
So if you maintain the cost where it is, then these people will maintain their market share. But should you shift the cost to them, they'll bear it. And if they shift it to the consumers, either way they are to lose. So you shift it to the consumers, they won't buy your product. You maintain it yourself, you're increasing your cost, and therefore your returns will be lower. So it's a delicate kind of scenario here, and that is why we insist that until government really realizes that everybody has to come on board, we have no problem. And they should bear the cost until they realize that the system is up and running. It's okay, and now everything has stabilized. We have realized our money, okay. We have realized that according to statistics, we have been able to collect so much,
right?
You know, but it's barely a year, because if you went live on 1st of Feb, how do you then tell us that on 1st July you have seen the system is okay? So it's quite short a time for you to be able to reverse a policy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Before I go to my next question, I'm interested in knowing how exactly the clients will use this stamp. There is something you brought up in your previous discussion. I don't see myself. I don't know. Could you tell me how is this stamp exactly supposed to be used in relation to the customer? A
stamp is affixed on the product. Okay, it's a printed kind of paper.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't have a sample here. I would have shown you, but it's printed and sealed, put on the paper. Sorry, it's a paper seal, waterproof. It's put on a product, so it has peculiar colors, so you'd easily see it if you see the product that has been stamped.
Okay.
But as you have rightly said, you don't know, and very many out there don't know. I would be surprised if you found consumers who will tell you that, we know everything about digital stamps.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And Ugandans appear to be sharp. How sure are we that it won't be duplicated? You did put some questions to this Swiss company that you mentioned. I imagine you've been involved as stakeholders. You've been involved in right from the inception in 2017 to date in the planning of this DTS. At what point are we protected against counterfeiting the stamp itself?
Well, that is a question that we have been raising ourselves. Okay, and I would deny the fact that we were not involved in the SICPA contracting and discussions and all this, the terms of reference and everything. We just found out about SICPA later when government was intending to implement. We didn't hear anything about them until that time of implementation, when people were approached one by one, case on case. There is this kind of working relationship where in silos, certain government entities go on and do whatever they're doing, and then it is pushed to the public suddenly. So that is what happened. So when it happened, it was a case on case. Each individual manufacturer was approached differently. Okay. And that is a very big concern. So if you approach each person differently, each person has their own perception of what you're doing. So in that way, it makes it harder for people to, you know, to understand what is really going on. So about the issue of counterfeiting, we have been assured by URA that, you know, this is going to be, you know, a company, very credible company, and their stamps are, you know, but
interesting. Mr. Mzamiru, before I seek your final
I've seen the stamp myself.
Yes, please.
Okay, and I know how it looks like. I know its features, but the public doesn't, and that is our biggest concern. The manufacturer will know, but the public doesn't, and because the public doesn't, then that means that anybody else can do whatever they want because the public doesn't know. You understand?
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So as long as the public doesn't know, then we cannot guarantee on our side that everything will be rosy or everything is, there's no counterfeit out there.
Interesting. You brought in the issue of URA, and I'm a bit concerned. Perhaps you could also share the same concern with me. We understand that URA is mandated with revenue collection. They are the taxman. But now you're talking about them guaranteeing the safety of this stamp, the protection of consumers, which I imagine is a responsibility for the for UNBS. What is your take on that dilemma?
I was as puzzled as you are. Yes. So in the president's letter, it was indicating that this particular stamp is going to do all those two, assuring revenue collection as well as ensuring consumer protection. Okay, but in the discussions we lost it along the way, so it seemed to be more of a revenue collection bit as opposed to the consumer protection bit, because UNBS already had their own system which was running and perfectly okay. You know, the e-tag, I don't know whether you heard about the e-tag. That system was running before the digital stamp came on board. We had the QMark already. So we are so used to the protection through UNBS as opposed to this whole thing. For us, we see it as a duplication of processes, okay? And there is no sensitization. People may know at least a little bit of the QMark, okay? But people don't know about the digital stamps.
Okay.
Yes.
People don't know about the digital stamps. Now, let us take a very short break. We'll be right back, still with the manager, policy and advocacy here at the Uganda Manufacturers Association.
Smart 24. Smart business.